How's it going, everybody? Daner here with North Central Coins, and today we're going to be breaking down the top 10 most valuable Walking Liberty half dollars of all time. Now, the Walking Liberty was produced between the years 1916 and 1947, and it is definitely one of the most iconic coins of all time. It's not only sought after by American collectors, but also by Canadian and collectors worldwide alike like to collect these things. They are both easily accessible. You can find them at your local coin shops, you can find them on eBay, a lot of the times for reasonable prices near spot. But the ones that I'm going to be breaking down in this video are going to be the holy grails, the Hail Marys, the ones that are worth tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you definitely want to pay attention and stay until the end of this list so you can find out number one. But before I do start breaking all of this down, I would really appreciate if you guys would hit that thumbs up and subscribe if you have not and you would like to see more coin collecting content just like this. And then without further ado, what do you say we start breaking down my top 10 picks for the most valuable Walking Liberty half dollars of all time. So the way I'm going to do this today is I'm going to start at number 10, which is going to be the least valuable on this list, and I'm going to work my way up to number 1, which is going to be the most valuable. So starting things off at number 10 is the 1923S Walking Liberty. Now this has a mintage of 2,178,000. Now this half dollar can fetch you around $17 in a low grade state, so that's not too much more over silver melt value, but it can fetch you all the way up to $14,000 when it starts hitting the mid to high MS range. Now, these half dollars were only minted in San Francisco, and all of the P's and D's that you find for the year 1923 will actually be counterfeits. Number 9 is the 1920 San Francisco Mint. With a mintage of 4,624,000, you can fetch around $15 for a low grade, so that's about 2 times over silver melt value, and it can go all the way up to $15,000 when it starts hitting the high MS range. Number 8 is the 1918 San Francisco Mint Walking Liberty. With a mintage of 10,282,000, it can fetch around $10 in a low grade. So far this is the least valuable in a low grade state, but it can fetch all the way up to $15,500 when you start hitting the high MS range. Number 7 is the 1921. With an extremely low mintage of 246,000, this Walking Liberty was actually minted at all 3 of the United States mints, San Francisco, Denver, and Philadelphia, but the Philadelphia does not have a mint mark on the coin. Now, this half dollar can actually fetch you some pretty good money. Even in the lower grade states, it can still be worth around $150, but it can go all the way up to $17,500 when you start hitting the high MS range. Number 6 is the 1920 Denver Mint Walking Liberty. With a mintage of 1,551,000, this half dollar can fetch you around $15 in the low grade states, and it can go all the way up to $17,500 when you start hitting the high MS range. Well, we're already halfway through this list. We are just breezing through. One of the reasons we're going so quickly is because I am not actually covering any errors or varieties on this list. This is just mainly going to be the key dates that you want to look for that are super valuable. I'm hoping you guys can find this helpful, whether you are a collector from the United States, Canada, or from any other country in the world. Sometimes it can get a little overwhelming. You know, these had a pretty large date run, so knowing what ones to look out for can be a little tricky. So let's go to number 5 on this list, which is the 1917 San Francisco Mint. With a low mintage of 952,000, which is actually very low by American standards. This is actually an extremely hard coin to find in mint state because so many of them were widely used in circulation. When they put them out, the public used them a lot. So this can fetch you around $27 in the low grade state, but it can go all the way up to $22,000 when it starts hitting the high MS range. Number 4 is the 1918 Denver Mint Walking Liberty half dollar. With a mintage of 3,853,000, less were actually made in Denver that year than any of the other mints. So that's why the Denver Mint strike is so much more desirable than the other mint strikes. Now, this can fetch you around $15 in the low grade state, so not super valuable if you find it all beat up and scrappy, but this can actually be worth up to $28,000 in the high MS range. So we are starting to get up into the nitty gritty valuable coins now, hitting almost $30,000 if you can find one of these in an MS state. Now, a lot of the time, if you do find these dates, they're probably going to be pretty beat up and scrappy, and you're most likely going to be getting them in a scrap silver purchase. But you can always keep your eyes open on eBay and online auctions, and maybe one day you can scout one of these out and grab them for a pretty decent price. So now we are at the top 3 valuable Walking Liberty half dollars. So number 3 is the 1921 Denver Mint. Now, the 1921 Denver Mint is actually the lowest mintage and worth the highest amount in a low-grade state. Now, the 1921 Denver Mint has a mintage of 208,000, and it can actually be worth $215 even in a low-grade state. So if you happen to score one of these in a scrap silver purchase, you're going to make some pretty good money off of it. And this bad boy can be worth all the way up to $40,000 in the high MS range. Now, number 2 is another 1921, which is the 1921 San Francisco Mint, which has a mintage of 548,000. Now, this isn't nearly as valuable in the low grade state as I mentioned as the 1921 Denver, but it can be worth around $65 in the low grade range and all the way up to $100,000 when you start hitting the high MS range. If you look at the price discrepancy between low and high grade examples of the 1921S, there is an absolutely massive price jump between low grade and high grade examples of this coin. And one of the reasons probably is because all of the high grade examples have been accounted for, and your chances of actually finding one of these uncirculated in a mint state is pretty much slim to nil. And if you do happen to find one that's, let's say, almost uncirculated or a low-grade mint state, you're probably still going to pay some buku dollars, and I would be very hesitant to buy any of these off of eBay or anywhere unless it has been graded at this point, because if someone is selling you one of these key dates out of a coin flip, you might want to ask yourself, is this coin legitimate? You definitely want to test it with either a Sigma or a machine to make sure, first of all, it's legitimately silver. But a lot of the times with some of these key date coins, they will actually counterfeit them in silver. They'll do a really good job, and you definitely want an expert to look it over before you're spending any big money on a coin that you think might be super valuable. Now, all of that being said, number 1 on this list is going to be the 1919 Denver Mint. Now, the mintage isn't quite as low with this one as some of the other coins we've discussed on this list. It has a pretty low mintage of 1,165,000, which is relatively low in American standards. Now, this can fetch you around $29 in a low-grade state, and it can go all the way up to $180,000 in the mid to high MS range. Now, these have actually sold in heritage auctions for around $180,000 to $200,000 in the past. They are definitely the most sought after of the half dollars in terms of filling out collections and completing date runs. A lot of collectors need these, and they are super hard to find in the MS states. Now, similar to some of the other coins I mentioned earlier in this video, one of the reasons it's so hard to find the 1919D in a mint state is because the public used them a lot and it was very heavily circulated. Back then, money did not necessarily work the same as it worked now. People weren't going around buying stuff with their debit cards back then. Money actually had value, and people would go out and use their coins to purchase things. A lot of the times, if people had bills, it was just a representation of silver or gold that they had in the bank, because that is the system that they used back then. So very rarely did people actually buy things or use bills for everyday purchases. A lot of the times people would just carry around pocket change and make their purchases that way. So to know how many 1919Ds went through the ringer and the meat grinder through the 20s, 30s, and 40s, people don't want to know, but it's definitely a good one to keep your eye out for. Even if you find one in a low-grade state, it can still help you fill out your collection. And if you do happen to find one that's a little bit nicer, maybe you can make some pretty good money off of it. But I think that is pretty much going to do it for this one, guys. So I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you find it helpful. If you did, please hit that thumbs up and please subscribe if you would like to see more coin collecting content just like this. Also, if you'd like to check out some of my educational Canadian coin videos or some of my coin roll hunts, I would definitely appreciate that a lot. But thank you so much for watching. Until the next one, everybody, peace out and have a good one, y'all.